There are places on the earth that feel like time just stopped. Entire towns with streets, schools, and homes that are completely abandoned and left to decay in silence. Some were destroyed by disasters, others emptied overnight, and a few are still surrounded by mystery. In this video, we're going to explore 15 creepy places where no one lives. Places so haunting and forgotten, they're going to make you wonder what really happened there and why no one ever came back. Let's start with number 15, Japan's concrete ghost city, Hashima Island. Off the coast of Nagasaki is an island that looks more like a rusting battleship than actual land. It's known as Hashima Island, or more ominously, Battleship Island or Gunkanjima. It was once one of the most densely populated places, but now it's a crumbling ruin, a silent concrete corpse surrounded by the sea. Hashima Island, it was originally a coal mining facility bought by Mitsubishi in the late 1800s as Japan rapidly industrialized. To house the growing workforce there, the company constructed these apartment blocks, schools, shops, and even hospitals. At its peak in the 1950s, more than 5,000 people lived on this tiny island of only 16 acres, and they were stacked in layers like bricks in a dystopian hive. In 1974, the island was completely abandoned. Residents left in a hurry, taking only what they could carry. Books were left on desks, bicycles rusted in the courtyards, dinner plates sat on tables. The result is a chilling snapshot of life that was frozen in time, where nature and decay now rule. The island was off limits for decades, partially due to safety concerns and partially because of its dark past. During World War II, Korean and Chinese forced laborers were brought there under brutal conditions. Many died underground in the mines. This legacy has cast a long shadow, turning the island not just into a ghost town, but to a memorial to suffering. In recent years, the Japanese government has opened Hashima for limited tourism, but access is tightly controlled. Despite the deterioration, the island has fascinated filmmakers, historians, and ghost hunters. It was even used as a villain's lair in the James Bond film Skyfall. From above, it looks like a fortress that's in the water, a narrow, oblong slab of gray surrounded by bright blue ocean. There are no signs of life, no moving vehicles, no vegetation, no lights. Just a decaying shell, like an abandoned warship that was lost at sea, too far gone to rescue, and too eerie to forget. Number 14, the town that's still burning, Centralia. Beneath the hills of eastern Pennsylvania lies a fire that's been burning since 1962, and it shows no signs of stopping. This is Centralia, a nearly empty town built atop a raging underground coal seam fire that's turned homes into hazard zones, cracked roads into steaming vents, and left an eerie skeleton of a community where no one dares to live. What remains now is little more than a handful of homes, a cemetery, and a vast wasteland of scorched ground. The fire began when a local landfill was burned too close to an exposed coal vein. The flames spread quickly through the extensive mine tunnels beneath the town, igniting a blaze that burrowed deep into the earth. Despite years of effort, the fire was impossible to contain. Toxic gases and dangerous sinkholes began to appear, and residents started to notice their basements filling with heat and carbon monoxide. By the 1980s, the government stepped in, the town was condemned, and most of its residents accepted buyouts and just left. Only a handful of people defied the orders and stayed, battling for the right to remain in what was essentially a ghost town perched above hell. Today, it's a curiosity. Graffiti-covered roads crisscross the landscape of cracked asphalt. Trees stand dead and blackened, their roots cooking in the heat from below. This underground fire could burn for another 250 years, feeding on the coal beneath the region. There is no known way to extinguish this fire, but from above it looks like a patchwork of forest, dirt paths and faint grid lines where streets used to be. You can still trace the outline of the former town, roads that lead nowhere, cul-de-sacs with no houses, sidewalks ending in grass. Heat mapping and thermal imaging revealed the true terror of this place, a glowing signature beneath the earth, irregular patches of high-temperature zones that are scattered under the surface. A map of the town consumed from below, erased not by war or plague, but by fire. Number 13. Namibia's sand-filled ghost town, Kolmanskop. In the Namib Desert, surrounded by rolling dunes and searing winds, lies the remains of a diamond mining town that was swallowed whole by the sand. This is Kolmanskop, a once thriving German settlement that has become one of the most surreal, abandoned places on the planet. No one lives here now. The only thing that moves is the wind, carrying sand into every room, every hallway, every hollow place. Kolmanskop was founded in the early 1900s after a railway worker discovered diamonds there on the surface. And almost overnight, a town sprang up with luxury unheard of for its desolate location. There were mansions, a hospital with Africa's first X-ray machine, a school, a bowling alley, a theater, even an ice factory. Residents drank champagne, played European music, and enjoyed wealth pulled straight from the ground. But as the diamond fields dried up and richer deposits were discovered elsewhere, Kolmanskop was abandoned. By the 1950s, it was already falling silent, and the desert began its slow invasion. Kolmanskop was miles from the nearest inhabited town, with visitors driving across vast stretches of unpaved desert to reach it. But those who do are rewarded with an unforgettable vision, an entire town that's dissolving into the sand, architecture blending with the dunes, civilization being reclaimed grain by grain. From above, faint rectangles that hint at foundations, roof outlines barely holding back the desert. It looks like a town sinking beneath a golden sea. There are no cars, no crops, no water towers, just the geometric scars of something that once thrived, now vanishing into the Earth's dry breath. Number 12. Taiwan's abandoned pod village, the Sanji Resort. Just outside of New Taipei City in Taiwan, along a windy coastal highway that faces the sea, is the crumbling remains of what was once meant to be a luxury utopia of the future. This is Sanji, a collection of abandoned UFO-shaped pod buildings that looks like they were dropped from the sky. Construction began in the late 1970s, and it was planned as a seaside resort for wealthy vacationers using futuristic modular architecture that resembles flying saucers. The pods were prefabricated and stacked in interlocking curves, giving the entire thing a surreal space colony aesthetic. But almost as soon as construction began, things started going wrong. Numerous fatal accidents were reported on site. Workers fell, equipment failed, and rumors of curses quickly spread. Local superstition linked this land to an old Dutch burial ground, and some believed the spirits of the dead were resisting the resort's development. Financial backing then faltered. Developers pulled out, and by the early 1980s, the project was abandoned, leaving dozens of brightly colored pods baking in the sun, exposed to typhoons and time. Over the decades, nature and decay took hold. Windows shattered, doors rusted off hinges, plants forced their way through cracks in the floors. The interiors were left unfinished, kitchen tiles half installed, staircases leading to nowhere. The silence of this place was punctuated only by the ocean wind howling. In 2008, the local government announced plans to demolish this site, and by 2010, most of the original pods were torn down, but their memories lives on in photographs and viral videos that captured the haunting fusion of retrofuturism and quiet failure. From above, it once looked like a toy village forgotten on a beach, bright circular pods arranged in rows, staring skywards like alien eyes. In older photos, you can trace the curves of the roadways that wound through the site, the gaps where the pods were never installed, and the weathering marks where paint faded and the roofs collapsed. It is a ghost town built for a future that never came. Number 11. China's buried earthquake city, Beichuan. In the mountains of Sichuan province, between ridges and a steep forested slope, lies the shattered remains of Beichuan, a city that was violently wiped from the map by one of the most devastating earthquakes in China's modern history. On May 12, 2008, a magnitude 7.9 quake struck this region, killing over 80,000 people, with Beichuan experiencing some of the worst destruction and loss of life. Entire apartment blocks collapsed like dominoes, hillsides gave way, and landslides that buried schools, homes, and streets under thousands of tons of debris. A nearby dam burst, flooding low-lying areas with muddy water. This town was so thoroughly devastated that the Chinese government made the decision to abandon it entirely. A new Beichuan was built nearby, but the original one was left untouched. Now, what remains is a frozen time capsule of horror. Crushed buildings still lie where they fell. Rebar and concrete are tangled like broken bones. School bags are strewn in the ruins of classrooms. Cars sit half submerged in cracked roads. One day, it was filled with life. The next, it was filled with silence. The people didn't leave because the economy dried up or war broke out. They left because the earth itself opened up beneath them. And so the city stands as both a natural disaster and a symbol of human vulnerability. From above, Beichuan resembles a city in mid-collapse. The outlines of buildings remain, but the structures themselves are slumped and broken. Imagery reveals the contrast between the old city and the new one nearby, a ghost of concrete living beside a grid. In thermal and high-res scans, Beichuan is a scar in the mountains, vivid and unmistakable. Number 10. Cyprus's sealed-off time capsule, Varosha. On the eastern coast of Cyprus, in the sun and salt air, lies a ghost city that's trapped in time. This is Varosha, once the crown jewel of the Cypriot Riviera, filled with luxury hotels, seaside resorts, and high-end boutiques. In the early 1970s, it was one of the most popular tourist destinations in the Mediterranean. Then came the Turkish invasion of 1974, and everything changed. As Turkish forces advanced into the city of Famagusta, where Varosha is located, the Greek Cypriot population fled in panic. Within days, the district was sealed off with fences, guarded by Turkish troops, and declared a military exclusion zone. No one was allowed to return. Over the next 5 decades, time simply stopped inside the perimeter. Hotel lobbies are frozen mid-cleanup. Department stores still stocked with 1970s fashion. Cars sit idle with keys in the ignition. Plants grow through tile floors and burst through shattered windows. Some buildings have collapsed. Others are eerily intact. The silence here is profound. For decades, it was one of the most perfectly preserved examples of modern abandonment. Unlike ancient ruins, Varosha is filled with contemporary decay. Televisions from 1974, record players, sunglasses, magazines, everything is familiar, yet just a bit off. A city on pause, where the clock was never allowed to tick again. From above, Varosha looks like a postcard turned gray. The beachfront curves perfectly along the Mediterranean, the buildings forming a dense urban lattice. But zoom in and the cracks appear. Roofs caved in, roads overtaken by vegetation, no signs of cars or movement. The zone is unmistakably empty, yet held in place. A seaside paradise turned phantom limb. Perfectly mapped, but utterly uninhabited. Number 9. China's village that was swallowed by nature, Hotuan. On the eastern side of China's Shengshan Island, within the Zhoushan archipelago, lies a village that looks less like a human settlement and more like a forgotten temple that was consumed by the jungle. This is Hotuan, once home to a thriving fishing community, now completely overtaken by a thick veil of creeping vines, moss, and silence. It is one of the most haunting examples of what happens when nature reclaims civilization. Founded in the 1950s, Hotuan was a remote but prosperous village, relying on the nearby East China Sea for its bounty. At its height, it housed over 2,000 people, but due to geographic isolation, declining fishing stocks, and lack of modern infrastructure, the population began to dwindle by the 1990s. By the early 2000s, it was abandoned entirely. Buildings are still standing, brick homes, stone stairways, tiled rooftops, but every surface is covered by green. Ivy spills from windows, figs grow from gutters, entire homes are wrapped like presents in vegetation. From a distance, the village looks like it's breathing with the leaves. But despite this eerie beauty, the village is not entirely forgotten. In recent years, tourists and photographers have begun to visit, drawn by images of ghostly green windows and staircases to nowhere. A few enterprising locals have returned to run guest houses or food stands for day visitors, but at the core of this village, it remains untouched, too overgrown, too precarious, too scared in its quiet entropy. Hotuan is a living reminder that no matter how permanent our structures feel, they are temporary guests in nature's domain. Leave long enough, and the wild will come back. From above, it's barely distinguishable from the forested hills around it. The outlines of roads and rooftops peek through the canopy, though, like ancient ruins beneath the vines. Imagery shows a patchwork of green textures, smooth treetops broken by the occasional square edge of a house. It is a ghost town wrapped in the living world, still breathing beneath the leaves. Number 8. France's Village of Shadows, Oradour-sur-Glane. In the countryside of west-central France, a village stands in permanent mourning. This is Oradour-sur-Glane, a town that was not abandoned slowly, but extinguished in a single day during the horrors of World War II. On June 10, 1944, a Nazi Waffen-SS division massacred 642 villagers, including women and children, and burned the town to the ground. After the war, Charles de Gaulle declared that it should never be rebuilt. Instead, it would remain as it was, a sacred ruin, a memorial preserved in silence. Today, visitors walk through shattered streets as if through a museum of ghosts. The burned-out husks of cars still sit in the garages. Bicycles rust outside melted door frames. The school, the bakery, the church all stand as they did on that terrible day. Grass grows through the cobblestone. Wind stirs the dust through hollow windows. There are no residents, only memories here. Unlike many abandoned places, Oradour is meticulously preserved. No restoration, no renovation. Every charred beam and broken brick is left in place, protected by the state and watched over by survivors and historians. The most harrowing sight is the church, where women and children were locked inside and killed with explosives and fire. The altar still stands, the iron bell hangs silent, and it's a place where even whispers feel too loud. Oradour is not haunted by ghosts in the traditional sense. It's haunted by the truth. A village that could have disappeared into the soil has instead been frozen in agony so no one forgets what happened. It's both an act of resistance and remembrance. From above, the roadways are intact, but the buildings cast broken shadows. Trees line the outskirts, but no smoke rises, no vehicles move, and the church stands central. Its stonework intact, but its roof darkened by time. It is a village that was built by hands, destroyed by hatred, and preserved in silence. Moving on to number 7, Russia's forgotten Arctic town, Kadichchan. In the Russian Far East, located in a frozen landscape of the Magadan Oblast, lies a place that has once thrived with the heat of furnaces and the laughter of children, but now it stands silent and lifeless. This is Kadichchan, a Soviet mining town that was built for function, abandoned with haste, and now survives only as a cold, crumbling echo of an engineered past. Surrounded by permafrost and mountains, the town is so remote and so desolate that even Russia itself has largely forgotten it exists. Kadichchan was founded during World War II as part of Stalin's push to exploit the region's rich coal deposits. The town was populated primarily by forced labor. Those are gulag prisoners who mined coal under brutal conditions. Over time, it evolved into a functioning town with schools, libraries, cinemas, and apartment buildings, home to thousands of people. At its peak in the 1980s, it housed nearly 12,000 residents and provided the necessary fuel for nearby industrial complexes. But after the fall of the Soviet Union, the centralized system that supported this town fell apart. Coal demand plummeted. The harsh conditions and isolation made the area difficult and expensive. Then, in 1996, an explosion at one of the mines killed 6 workers. That was the final straw. The government declared the mines too dangerous and uneconomical. Within a year, the entire town was evacuated. And when people left, they left fast. Books were left on shelves, clothing still hangs in closets, old Soviet propaganda posters curl on the walls. Whole rooms remained untouched since the 1990s, like a museum exhibit that no one curated. Few people dare to visit here. The journey requires navigating icy roads far from any modern infrastructure. Temperatures often plunge below -40 degrees Celsius in the winter, and there's a sense that the town is waiting for something, not rescue, not revival, just acknowledgement. What makes it really eerie is the completeness. Unlike other ghost towns that were slowly reclaimed, this one remains structurally intact, but emotionally vacant. There are dozens of apartment blocks still standing as if the residents are just out away on a walk, but they never came back. From above, it's like a ghost city that was etched into the white of the tundra. The layout is precise. Soviet-style blocks arranged in neat lines, facing an endless blanket of snow. There's no footprints, no tire marks, no seasonal change in the structures. The entire town registers as cold as the land around it, a frozen scar of Soviet ambition, abandoned in one of the harshest places on Earth. Number 6. Azerbaijan's City of Shells, Agdam. In the disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh, where decades of conflict have left land pockmarked with ruins, lies the abandoned city of Agdam, a place once filled with life and commerce, now reduced to skeletal remains. Known as the Hiroshima of the Caucasus, Agdam was once home to nearly 150,000 people, but today it's an eerily quiet expanse of broken concrete and overgrown fields. No one lives here anymore, no one dares. But today, it's an eerily quiet expanse of broken concrete and overgrown fields. No one lives here anymore, no one dares. Agdam was a thriving city during the Soviet era. It was known for its industry, cultural institutions, and wide boulevards lined with trees. But when the First War erupted in the early 1990s between Armenia and Azerbaijan, Agdam became a frontline city. In 1993, Armenian forces advanced and captured the city, prompting the complete evacuation of the population. Fearing further violence, the city wasn't merely abandoned. It was looted, burned, and systematically destroyed. Whole neighborhoods were reduced to rubble. Apartment buildings were shelled, cultural sites were gutted. The mosque at the city center became a perch for snipers. What remains is not just an empty city, but a place violently emptied. Despite ceasefires and shifting political control, Agdam remains largely inaccessible to civilians. Landmines still dot the outskirts, and many buildings are structurally unstable. There are rumors of looters and unofficial scavengers, but they leave quickly. It's a city trapped in the aftermath of a war, suspended in a state of unresolved tragedy. Only recently in the 2020 ceasefire agreement has there been talk of restoring parts of the city, but the wounds are deep and the scars are visible from every angle. From above, it looks like a city that was devoured from within. An urban footprint is clearly visible, streets, blocks, intersections, but the structures are shadows of their former selves. Rooftops are missing, walls are collapsed. The mosque is still there, its dome intact but scarred. And scans of the city appear cold, inert. Compared to the living towns nearby, Agdam is a gray wound on the green skin of the Caucasus. Unmoving, unresolved, and eerily geometric in its silence. Number 5. Henry Ford's Jungle City, Fordlandia. In the Amazon rainforest, hundreds of miles from Brazil's urban centers, lies the rotting skeleton of an American dream gone terribly wrong. This is Fordlandia, a ghost town built by Henry Ford in the 1920s. It became one of history's most surreal case studies in cultural arrogance, environmental miscalculation, and even a corporate failure. Today, Fordlandia stands as a fusion of Midwestern architecture and tropical decay, a failed city where no one lives and no one truly belonged. The idea was ambitious. Ford wanted a steady supply of rubber for his automobile empire, and he didn't want to rely on British-controlled Asian sources. So he bought a 2.5 million acre tract of land, and he decided to build an all-American town in the middle of the Brazilian jungle. Fordlandia, it would have schools, hospitals, suburban houses, and even a golf course. It would have strict rules too, no alcohol, no tobacco, and an American-style meal served in a company cafeteria. The result? Disaster. The tropical climate proved hostile to the rubber trees, which were planted too close together and devastated by blight and pests. The Brazilian workers, who were miffed at Ford's puritanical rules, leading to a riot in 1930 that forced American managers to flee the town. The rigid, cookie-cutter design of the town didn't fit the landscape, and the imported lifestyle clashed with the local customs. By 1945, the rubber project was abandoned. Ford sold the land back to the Brazilian government for a fraction of its cost, and the jungle began its quiet conquest. Now, colonial-style homes sit roofless under the sun. The factory buildings still stand, rusted and creaking, and the water tower's there, towering like a monument to confusion. It's not just that the town was abandoned, it's that it really never lived. Fordlandia is one of those places that doesn't feel real until you see it. A small American town dropped in the heart of the Amazon, perfectly preserved in its failure. You can walk down the main road and see the faded names on buildings, cafeteria, school, hospital. But there are no people, no signs of daily life, only the sound of insects and the dense breathing of the forest. From above, it looks like a town that was swallowed by nature in slow motion. Roofs have caved in, roads fade into the jungle, and the old factory buildings are still visible, but barely. It is a scar of foreign ambition etched into the living heart of the Amazon. Number 4. Argentina's drowned town, Villa Ipiquen. On the shores in western Argentina, beneath a veil of salt-crusted ruins and silence, lies a town that once welcomed thousands of visitors, and then it vanished beneath the water. This Villa Ipiquen, a tourist resort built on the promise of healing waters and natural beauty, which was completely submerged in 1985 when a nearby dam failed. For nearly 25 years, the town was underwater. When the waters finally receded, what emerged looked like a post-apocalyptic vision frozen in salt. Founded in the 1920s, Villa Ipiquen was a booming spa destination by the mid-20th century. Its saltwater lakes, said to be saltier than the Dead Sea, drew people seeking therapeutic cures. At its peak, it hosted over 25,000 people a year. The town featured hotels, spas, shops, and restaurants, all designed around wellness and relaxation. But beneath this prosperity lay a dangerous design flaw. The town was built on low land between the lake and an artificial canal. In November 1985, after a period of heavy rains, the canal overflowed. The lake surged through a protective embankment and slowly began to consume the town. It wasn't a tsunami, it was a creeping, unstoppable flood. Residents watched helplessly as the water level rose inch by inch, swallowing roads, buildings, and memories. Within a few weeks, it was completely submerged in under 10 meters of water. For decades, the town was lost. Locals moved, of course. The salt-rich lake continued to erode everything it touched. Metal corroded, concrete cracked, trees died. And then in the early 2000s, the water began to recede. What returned was not the town that was lost, but a skeletal, crystalline version of it, a shimmering, salt-coated ruin that seemed sculpted by ghosts. Despite its eerie appearance, a few people come each year. Photographers, explorers, curious tourists. One man even returned to live there, refusing to leave his childhood home. But the town itself remains uninhabited. No one lives here because no one can. It is a reminder of how water gives life and how easily it can take it away. From above, the grid of streets is still visible but fractured. Buildings look like pale scars, their roofs collapsed or missing, and the surrounding water is tinted with minerals and the ground gleams with salt deposits. It is a drowned city that's returned from the deep, glistening with the memory of what it once was. Number 3. Turkey's Stone City, Kayaku. Tucked into the hills in Turkey lies a haunting labyrinth of empty stone houses and crumbling chapels, cascading down a hillside like a forgotten mosaic. This is Kayaku, once a thriving Greek village known as Livisi, now an open-air ruin slowly fading into the landscape. No one lives here anymore. The doors are gone, the windows are hollow. Only the shell remains, a city that was emptied by war, exile, and time. In the early 20th century, it was home to nearly 10,000 Greek Orthodox residents living in peaceful coexistence with neighboring Turkish Muslims. The community flourished with schools, churches, bakeries, and homes that were built in the classic Anatolian Greek style, clinging to the hills in rows like vineyard terraces. The two largest churches dominated the skyline, their domes and arches now skeletal, their frescoes faded under the layers of lichen. Built in 1923 following the Greco-Turkish War and the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish and Greek governments signed a population exchange agreement under the Treaty of Lausanne. This agreement forcibly relocated over 1.5 million Greeks from Turkey and 500,000 Muslims from Greece, uprooting centuries-old communities overnight. The residents were given days to pack, boarding ships bound for an unfamiliar Greece, leaving behind not just homes, but ancestors' graves, language, and identity. As a result, the village never reoccupied, and nature slowly began to reclaim it. Earthquakes and erosion hastened this decay, and trees grow through the courtyards and roofs have collapsed. What's most haunting about this place is the stillness. The homes, though roofless, remain largely intact. You can walk through rooms, see fireplaces, niches for icons, and worn stone steps leading to long vacant lofts. In recent years, the Turkish government has preserved it as a historical monument, though a few locals live on the outskirts and tourist foot traffic has increased each summer, but the heart of the town remains frozen. Several novels and movies have been inspired by this, most notably Birds Without Wings by Louis de Brognier, who uses the village as a metaphor for the destruction of harmony. Here in this place, you don't just see abandoned buildings, you see a way of life that was forcibly removed. From above, it looks like a dense cluster of rectangles. It blends into the terrain, creating a kind of fossilized patchwork. There's no vehicles, no signs of agriculture, no development. Just a stone labyrinth in the hills, untouched by time, watched over only by the birds that glide overhead. Number 2. Italy's medieval cliffside, Krakow. Perched precariously on a steep hill in the Basilicata region of southern Italy, Krakow is one of the most visually dramatic and eerily abandoned towns in Europe. Krakow looks like a movie set frozen in decay. In fact, it's been used as one, appearing in films like The Passion of the Christ and Quantum of Solace. But this haunting town is no cinematic invention. It's real, and no one lives there anymore. Its origins date back to the 8th century, and by the 11th century it had become a feudal stronghold. Over the centuries it grew into a strategic hilltop, and its elevated position providing defense from invaders. The town was a dense maze of stone houses, chapels, and towers, with a central fortress that gave it an almost mythical appearance. Its location, though, did make it vulnerable to landslides, and its clay-rich soil, though fertile, was highly unstable. In the 20th century, those landslides became more frequent and devastating. After a particularly destructive event in 1963, most of Krakow's residents were forced to relocate to the valley below. Then came the earthquakes in the 1980s, and then flooding in the 1990s, further sealing the town's fate. Krakow was officially abandoned, left to the mercy of the elements. Now, what makes this especially eerie is the contrast between its former beauty and the current desolation. You can still see painted tiles on walls, religious icons cracked and faded gaze down from alcoves, broken furniture and cooking pots litter empty homes. The silence is profound, and the absence of people, despite the place's beauty, feels unnatural. Krakow isn't just a ruin, it's a warning, a reminder that even the most beautiful human achievements are vulnerable to nature, to time, and to the very ground beneath them. From above, it's a ridge of pale stone that clings to a narrow outcrop. The town rises from the cliffside like a ghost castle. Vegetation creeps around the edges, but the heart of the town remains stark, empty, exposed, and crumbling. A cliffside tomb for a civilization that once believed itself safe above the world. Number 1. Mexico's magnetic mystery, the Zone of Silence. Deep in the Chihuahuan desert of northern Mexico, in a barren and windswept stretch between the states of Durango, Chihuahua, and Coahuila, lies a strange, little-known place where myths and reality blur into a desert haze. This is La Zona del Silencio, or the Zone of Silence, a place where radio signals allegedly vanish, compasses spin, meteors fall, and people speak of lost time and bizarre phenomena. It's one of the most isolated regions in North America, and despite decades of speculation, research, and folklore, no one lives there, no one can. The legend of the Zone of Silence began to take shape in the 1930s, when a pilot flying over the desert reported that his radio stopped working for no apparent reason. In the decades that followed, locals spoke of areas where radios failed, television signals distorted, and compasses refused to point north. The mythology exploded in 1970 when a test missile launched from White Sands, New Mexico, veered wildly off course and crash-landed in this region. The United States government dispatched teams to retrieve the debris, and with them came scientists, helicopters, and mysterious equipment. Rumors began to spread. What had they found? Why here? And what exactly made this desert different? The zone sits on the same latitude as the Bermuda Triangle and the Egyptian pyramids, a detail that conspiracy theorists have seized upon as evidence of a global grid of energy anomalies. This region is rich with magnetite and uranium, and geologists note that its magnetic properties can, in fact, interfere with certain radio frequencies. Yet, for all its mysteries, the Zone of Silence remains mostly unexplored. The isolation, brutal climate, and lack of infrastructure here make permanent settlement nearly impossible. Temperatures soar above 45 degrees Celsius, that's 113 Fahrenheit in the summer, and the terrain is so hostile that vehicles frequently break down without warning. But one of the strangest and most overlooked aspects of the zone is its silence, not in the auditory sense, but in the complete absence of cultural noise. There's no airplanes overhead, no distant hum of traffic, no buzzing power lines. It's one of the last places on the planet where the modern world completely vanishes. The Mexican government has occasionally tried to capitalize on the myth, proposing ecotourism projects and even installing a monument, but those efforts have mostly stalled. The zone resists commodification. It remains untamed and deeply, chillingly empty. Could it be a natural magnetic anomaly, a rare geological configuration, or is the silence a veil over something humanity was never meant to understand? Whatever the truth may be, the Zone of Silence remains a place that defies certainty. It's as if the desert itself has chosen to remain mysterious. But when viewed from above, it stretches out like a scorched parchment across the northern shoulder of Mexico. The terrain appears unremarkable at first glance, dunes, dry riverbeds, and sun-baked rock. But zoom in, and patterns emerge, circular shadows, unnatural clearings, and strange straight-line depressions where no roads exist. Magnetic mapping reveals distorted fields, irregular and unaligned with the Earth's standard grid. Compared to the land around it, the zone looks wrong, as though reality itself is bending beneath the desert sun. This is a place that's unclaimed by cities, untouched by time, and guarded not by walls, but by silence.